Hello and welcome to The Art of Aging, part of the Abundant Aging podcast series from the Center for Abundant Aging. On this show, we look at what it means to age in America and in other places around the world with positive and empowering conversations that challenge, encourage, and inspire us all to age with abundance. Today, we're pleased to welcome Amy Elliot to the show. Amy Elliot is a PhD senior research scholar at Scripps Gerontology Center and the director of Opening Minds Through Art, otherwise known as OMA. It's an innovative intergenerational art program that empowers individuals living with dementia through creative expression. Her research focuses on advances that support person-directed, inclusive, and equitable long-term care environments. Through her role at OMA, she demonstrates how creative engagement honors individual autonomy and builds meaningful relationships, directly translating the person-directed care philosophy into practice. Previously, Dr. Elliot served as Director of Research and Evaluation for the Pioneer Network, a national center for the development of person-centered long-term care delivery systems. There, she built a compelling business case demonstrating how person-directed living environments yield positive quality of life outcomes while enhancing organizational performance. As a research and evaluation consultant, she collaborated with leading innovators to evaluate strategies that prioritize choice, autonomy, and relationships, supporting individuals and their care partners in achieving optimal quality of life regardless of residential settings. Amy brings extensive expertise in policy research, as you've heard, quality of life, impact analysis, and program evaluation to her work. Her scholarship increases research publications, case studies, educational modules, and book chapters that have contributed to the field of person-centered gerontology. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you, Beth. It's so nice to be here.
And just a reminder that this podcast series is sponsored by the Center for Abundant Aging. To learn more about the center, including our annual symposium in October, visit www.abundantaging.org, and more about that at the end. So, Amy, I'm going to take a breath. That was a long introduction. You've done just a few important things already in your professional career, and you could be doing a lot of other things. What drives your passion to be in this space at this time?
Yeah, Beth, would you believe it that my life shifted based on a self-study program in my graduate program that brought me completely to this path? My undergrad was in economics. I was working as a financial analyst for a global consulting firm. And while all of my colleagues were talking about getting their MBA, my whole passion was being around older people, older individuals that were my friends that I enjoy. I was volunteering at assisted living. I was spending all of my time going back to spend time with my grandma. And I thought, this is a space that I really, really want to be in. When I was a little girl, I grew up across from independent living apartments. So my community was all older people. I played there. They were my friends. I remember I had a friend we were birthday twins. We were both born on July 25th, but she was born 80 years earlier. But we were sure we had everything in common. We were just best friends. And my grandparents had changed my life as a little girl. And I thought, this is what I really want to do. And I found the John Glenn College of Public Affairs at Ohio State, where I could get a specialization in aging, doing policy work. And I thought, well, this could, huge, like a shift, that's a right turn, but I thought this is something I could do. And as part of that specialization in aging, I met with Bonnie Berman, who was at that time the director of gerontology. And I went to do a self-study with her. I met her once. I went in the second time, and we're going to talk about what I was going to do for the quarter. And she had this stack of printouts, Xerox copies at that time. We weren't going to lengths. The stack of printouts. And she handed it to me and she said, read these and then we'll talk, is what she said. And so I went and read, and I was reading about Pioneer Network, which was pretty newly formed at that time. I think it had been around for about 5 years. I was reading about these culture change adopters and what they were doing. And there was articles written by them or about them. And it was all about autonomy and person-directed living and a home, a nursing home, making sure that people were able to connect and meet and have relationships. And it just was beautiful. So I'm, page by page, I became becoming more engrossed and realizing that they're innovators. But anytime you learn about innovation, you also think about what is. And so that was the other side of the coin, that these were the innovators. It wasn't happening for other individuals living in nursing homes. They were in a provided director environments. They weren't choosing their wake up times or what they were eating or their activities. And I thought this isn't the way it should be. And so my analytical mind came into play. That's when I decided to pursue my doctorate and really study culture change adopters. And I had the hypothesis, well, surely their outcomes are better, right? I mean, if they're really taking care of their team, taking care and knowing each individual that lives there, their outcomes must be better. And so that's what I studied. That was my dissertation. And sure enough, those early adopters, when compared to similar organizations and also just to everybody else, like 15,000 other nursing homes, were significantly better. And as I graduated, Bonnie became director of Pioneer Network. So I went straight into that role. At that time, we were really working to codify what culture change was, what the practices were, wanting to disseminate it. So there was adoption at higher levels, working in policy areas, trying to remove barriers so that other nursing homes could adopt culture change at the same level. And Bonnie was a powerhouse there. So we got to do a lot of amazing things, and eventually became a consultant for Pioneer Network and organizations like the Eden Alternative. And every day, Beth, I would learn something new, something beautiful about how we can actually honor each other in a way that supports aging and growth and all of these things. So it was a wonderful time. And then I ended up at the Scripps Gerontology Center in September of 2023. And Opening Minds Through Art's founder, Lika Lokan, was retiring. And I met with her and the team, and she said, Amy, I want you to come and do this when I go. So that's how a researcher became a program director. It was a long path. That's what brought me here. And the people that I've worked with have driven my passion every day. And the good and the well-being that we are seeking for everyone drives my passion every day.
Well, not just a researcher, but you were in economics and finance, and then you end up directing this creative program. I mean, that is a script you couldn't have written for your life.
And I'm not an artist, by the way. I am not an artist, but the core of OMA is everything that I've been studying for all these years. So it fits in a very odd way. It fits.
Yeah. Well, creative programs do need people who can think analytically and research and all of those things to support the program. So you just mentioned it fits because of the basics of OMA. So tell us, what are the basics of the OMA program?
And so, as you mentioned, it is an intergenerational art making program designed for individuals living with dementia. So the way Lika built this program, there's three major players. There is the artist, usually the individual living with dementia. There's the volunteer. Again, it's designed as an intergenerational program, so oftentimes that's a student. But we find now that I'm a volunteer at my local OMA program, so there are other volunteers as well. And there's a facilitator. So the way it works, Beth, if I were the artist and you were the volunteer working with me, we would have an OMA art project. We would have things that we can look at together to know the steps. As a volunteer, you would be supporting me step by step. And it's interesting because one of the main parts of training we have to do is for the volunteers, because the goal of OMA is that the artist is making all of the decisions. And that's sometimes hard from a volunteer perspective. So we have to kind of really train and help people understand that what we're working on is letting that individual, not letting, empowering that individual to make the choices in each step of this process, where the colors they're using, where things are placed on the paper, creating the art themselves with the support of the volunteer. And because these are abstract art project. So again, OMA is based in a strength-based perspective, understanding the individual living with dementia's brain in a way that, recollect, if we're actually asking them to recall, to draw a tree, that can be more challenging. But these abstract art projects are failure free because you're building and creating, and it's full self-expression of the individual creating the art. So they're layered, they're complex, but again, strength-based for the individual living with dementia to do. And the facilitator's role is, as each of these, layers is happening, the facilitator is coming in and may say, Amy, do you want warm color? Are you looking at warm colors or cool colors? And I would choose, and we would be making, and then you as a volunteer would be supporting me in going through the process. And then the facilitator would take that away and bring the next. So it's designed beautifully. I mean, it absolutely, every step of Lika's design considers those three players and how they work together to empower this individual to express their most artistic and all the goals that they have for the project. So it's fantastic.
Yeah, and so in full disclosure, United Church Homes Communities are certified in OMA, and so when I am talking with folks about the importance of agency and voice, I use OMA as an example about how important it is for individuals to be given a limited number of choices, and anybody can choose between this or this, or if you have three things, and how empowering that is to us. I mean, that's what agency is, right?
It is. Yeah. And it's the structure that empowers that independence. So the way that OMA is structured, it absolutely empowers that individual to have that independence and choice, just like you're saying, thinking about the number of choices, but it's still a choice. So it's beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. One of my favorite parts of OMA, I love looking at the artwork, and like all artwork, some pieces are more draw me in more than others. But regardless of what the piece of art is, I love the final step of creating the art, and in that the artist is asked to name the piece of artwork.
It, for me, was one of the most powerful parts of working with OMA. Like, I remember my first OMA, I was there, and there was an artist, and it was done, and we were all, waiting for her to title her piece. We're leaning in. It was like she was thinking, she was taking her time, and you just absolutely are enthralled with it. Yesterday I was working with an artist, and she named her painting "One-Legged Man Running." And what we find, though, and what we find as the OMA team is you hear the title and then you see it. And that's another point of connection.
Yeah.
Because you see what they were trying, what they see, and you connect on that level.
One of my mentors ended up living in one of our communities, and he was living with Parkinson's, which, as it progressed, ended up with dementia. And one of the pieces of art that he did, it was shown to me, and I'm thinking, okay, that's lovely. I never would have imagined that this mentor was the age of my father, would have been doing a piece of artwork with glitter and whatnot. And when I turned it over, he was a retired pastor. When I turned it over, on the back, he had titled it Resurrection. And when I turned it back and looked at it, it's like, yes, okay, I see it. And for him, he had lost literally his ability to speak. And so this art, which was something he had never done before, his wife was the artist, but for him to find new ways to communicate in this program was extremely helpful, extremely meaningful. Yeah.
One story we tell, there was a artist who was a physicist who was experiencing insomnia and his journey with dementia. And he created a beautiful piece of art that we are often showing in our presentations. And he called it Night Chaos. But you see his, his journey, his struggle with insomnia through that painting. And then Lika tells this story that they do an art show. Oftentimes we have an OMA art show in our communities. And his painting was hanging on the wall, and he stood by it. And as people came, he would tell them, this is my painting. And his wife told Lika, he's won so many awards in his career, and I have never seen him as proud as he is standing there in front of his art and sharing it with the community. So it's powerful.
Yeah. I know that the Mather Institute has done some work and in taking a look at mental health. And there are three things that they note are important for mental health in older adults. One is agency.
Yeah.
The second is achievement. And the third is affiliation. And OMA does all of those.
Yes.
It allows people to have agency. Achievement, that's what that, as the artists are standing or sitting next to their work at the art show, there is a sense of pride and achievement. And so the third piece about that is affiliation. Talk about the actual process, because there's a liturgy, there's a ritual to the time when these individuals come together, which I think really fosters that sense of connection and belonging.
Yes, we start each OMA session with a song. So we sing, typically it's This Little Light of Mine. And we sing, I was just volunteering yesterday, and you hear some beautiful voices, there's some harmonies in there, but it really does set the tone. And then we sit down, and each project has an art sheet with step-by-step kind of instructions. But the really cool thing about it is there's bolded instructions. And as a volunteer, the volunteers know this is a time when it's time for choice. Mm-hmm. We're choosing, like you're saying, colors. Mm-hmm. We're choosing placement. So there is this layered process of creating it with this art sheet. And what we call it is the connectivity, or what Lika calls it is the connectivity triangle. So it is the volunteer, the artist, and the art. And then the art, in that sense, becomes the connection. It becomes the bridge. And there's so many times when I'll be working with a partner, and we'll be working in that connectivity triangle on that project. And then we stop and we stare at each other and we lock eyes. And that connection is so evident. But again, that process is key. As a volunteer and as a researcher, I'm kind of doing both, wearing both hats a lot of the time. But I'm amazed at the importance of each step of that process, so that we have the outcome. And then again, at the end, when we've gone through all the pieces and the artist is done, they can tinker. But when they're done naming the piece, and then we share it. We share with each other. Here's Amy's piece. Here's Beth's piece. We share with each other. And Lika also added in this idea of art talk. So commenting on the contrasting colors or the beautiful shapes, so that we're talking about the art in a way that art is meant to be spoken about. So it's a dignified process. It is grounded in art, but then, as you said, grounded in agency and choice and relationship. So it satisfies, it checks all the boxes.
Yep, it does. So that's how it started. Yeah. And that's been the core of OMA. The pandemic happened. And I know that you're looking at some new opportunities, new horizons, doing some research. Tell us a little bit about where those things are going.
So we have a few different things going on. We're building, first of all, with traditional OMA. And again, I hate to call it traditional. Lika, I always say she's like Johnny Appleseed, like she spread it.
Yeah, right.
The initial intergenerational program everywhere. And part of that was university-based models. So obviously mothership is Scripps Gerontology Center at Miami University, but other universities have adopted it. We're working with them more closely to understand how they're using it. And that's fascinating because it's oftentimes students in medical professions. So what we're learning in our outreach is that many, like for example, many med schools do not have a mandatory geriatric rotation, or
Less than 2% of medical
less than 2%, right? And or even occupational therapy, speech therapy. So what OMA provides is an opportunity for those students to go in and experience what we know from research OMA creates for those students: an increased empathy, an increased understanding, and also, quite frankly, Beth, if you're never exposed to, if you don't have that experiential learning and you're never around older people, we know not 100% of people would go into the field. But if 0% are in that experiential learning environment, 0% of what could have happened. So we are finding when we're really working with these university partners to do pre and post, and to again through our validated research instruments to understand the impact of OMA. That's one exciting thing that's happening. We want to build and grow that university model. Another thing that we realized during the pandemic and that we were hearing is that sometimes the big around the table isn't always working for every individual that might want to participate in OMA. So the idea of OMA at home, where it can be a pair, and that could be, again, a care partner with the individual living with dementia in their home, or it could be in a nursing home. But instead of the larger programming, its ability for that person to participate if they're unable to but want to. So OMA at home we're pilot testing it right now on some exciting projects, and that will launch soon. And we are building it in Respite. So we created an adaptation for Respite, worked with an organization called Respite for All, and we're hoping to spread it to other respites across the country. But again, it's amazing to me. That's been just something that's knocked me off my chair, how OMA just fits in all of these different environments with different people with the same outcomes. And it's really been so spectacular.
So, just for our listeners, Respite for All is a model of care for individuals who are living with dementia for their care partners. And Daphne Johnston is the founder of that, and she was just on our podcast 1 or 2 episodes prior to this one. So if you haven't listened to that conversation with Daphne, I strongly encourage you to go and find that conversation to learn more about that program, and that's congregation based, but it usually pulling the entire community together, not just one particular congregation. So yeah, I was very, very excited when Daphne was talking, and
Daphne is the best. And again, it's these partners that we can align with that have similar goals, and OMA can fit a need or fit into their programming as well. And that's part of what we're learning and doing and growing and understanding these adaptations where they're happening.
Yeah.
One of our university partners, there's a professor emeritus that's also a practicing clinical psychiatrist working with children in trauma. And she says she's an OMA facilitator. She does. So in some of her sessions, she said, I do OMA projects. I'll bring out magic dots, which is the name of one of our projects. She's like, and it looks like at the end, it's just like an OMA painting, but then there's Disney stickers on it. So we see it working in so many different areas, and we're really exploring that to see how we can. Oh, our team always says more OMA, more OMA.
More OMA. Yeah. Well, and United Church Homes partnered last year and tried an adaptation of OMA in one of our affordable housing communities.
Yes.
So these were individuals who were not living with dementia, so they didn't need the one-on-one volunteer. And there were some adaptations made throughout the 6 weeks or so that it was tried, but really strong positive feedback from the residents in that community. There were people who participated in that who never participate in events that are held in the community. And a couple of them were rearranging their schedules and doctor's appointments and other things so that they could go and they could participate when the folks were there doing OMA. So
yeah, that was happening in partnership with our training center pair up at Cleveland. And so it was the report from that was fantastic. And that's another area we're looking to expand.
Yeah. So if people are interested in OMA, what all do they need to know about how to get started?
Well, I would encourage them to go to our website, Opening Minds Through Art. I think it's www.oma. I think we're going to have the links available for anyone that's interested. The website is a fantastic resource. There's videos, there are descriptions of our programming. They can learn about facilitator training. They can see what we're up to and what we're doing. That would be the first point of connection. And then we are always open if you want to reach out to answer any questions, provide any information on how to get started.
And I can remember when the first UCH employees went through the training. First of all, it was one of our chaplains, and the reason why she was one of the first to do that is because I had met a chaplain at an international conference in California who was from Canada, and she said, "Oh, I've been to Ohio. I was just trained in OMA." And I went, "What?" Because I knew about OMA. I mean, this was like 2014, 2015. So when I came back and we were trying to figure out, okay, how might we do this? I said, I think we have chaplains who might be interested in doing that. And since they've done some thinking with OMA staff about the connection between creativity and spirituality and how the OMA experience really helps to gather the community and can be a connecting point. But one of the things that impressed me when they came back from the training is the notebook. And Lika is thorough. She was thorough.
Yeah, we just so you know, our notebook's getting smaller. We're going to a binder.
But
Yeah.
where to get the supplies
Yeah.
the most inexpensively, and it's a lot of work to be a facilitator and to do this within the midst of a community, but your answers are all there, and they also know that they have the support of your staff as well if they ever came across situations along the way.
Well, I think it's a great point, Beth. And as just putting my researcher hat on, one thing that's really blown me away in my short time with OMA, obviously studying culture change for 20 years and the barriers to adoption is the level to which OMA has been adopted. It'll be OMA's 20th anniversary in 2027.
Wow.
But OMA is global. So over 1,000 trained, like 1,200 trained facilitators around the world. Like you said, Canada, just on a call last night with Australia. we're working on Australia. But the level of adoption is something like I've never seen before. And it really speaks to, again, the way that Lika put it together. So when I was studying culture change, I had an article about how innovators, they're like the master chefs, but everybody else wants the recipe.
Right.
So Lika was this master chef, but I think one thing she did really well is she created a recipe that everyone could follow and jump in and immediately experience the magic of OMA. So
yeah, fantastic. Well, just to put a plug in here, this podcast will be launched here in the spring of 2025, and we are getting ready for our 10th symposium, which will happen at the end of October this year. And it's Igniting Creative Potential. And I am just so excited that Lika and Amy will both be part of the lineup of presenters for that program. And just so glad to find more ways to connect with you and however we can help support and spread the word about OMA. We're true believers here. So.
And Lika isn't doing a lot of retirement. So you got her. I mean, this is for anybody that wants to see Lika. This is a real opportunity to go and see her. And she's absolutely inspiring.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for inspiration.
Yeah. We twisted her arm.
Yeah.
So the website for OMA, I believe, is www.scrippsoma, SCRIPPSOMA.org. So that's how you can find Amy or more information about the program. And there are other things that you're involved with too, but we don't have time on this podcast. So we'll look forward to future conversations as we go. But one thing we like to do before we come to the end of our podcasts, is to ask us 3 questions of all of our guests about your own perceptions of your aging. So are you ready?
I think I'm ready.
Okay. When you think about how you've aged, what do you think has changed about you or grown with you that you really like about yourself?
I think my favorite thing is that I've realized the importance of connection.
Mm.
I appreciate connection. I walk a path intentionally with people that inspire me, with people that I learn from, but that also, my favorite part of any day is when a light bulb goes off and I have an aha and I realize something that I didn't know before. And that's because intentionally, again, the people I walk with drive me, inspire me, and help me to change the world. And that makes me very happy, very proud of that. I don't think I could have done that when I was younger. Now I know, oh, you seek out we've said it before, Beth. I mean, beautiful hearts and brilliant minds.
Yeah.
I seek them out,
Yeah.
and I like that.
Yeah. Sounds like you've learned from your own research.
Exactly.
Okay, question number 2. What has surprised you most about you as you've aged?
I think the thing that's most surprising is I probably always thought that aging was linear in a way. I don't know if you think like you're like cookie dough and you go in the oven and you get all warm and then ding and you're you're done, and then you're sort of this evolved person walking around. And I feel like it's opposite. There's obviously linear aspects, but I feel like I'm changing every day. I'm different every day.
Mm-hmm.
And some days, that cookie dough batter is all over the place. And sometimes it's just right. So just the way that life is a new day every day and you can change every day. I really thought probably at some point that I'd be, ding, I'm done, cookies out. And I'm this evolved version of me, but I have so much to learn and I enjoy that part of the process.
Well, I think that's one of the things our culture, one of the myths our culture says is that, you're going to get to adulthood and you're done. And there isn't anything further from the truth. Yeah. So the last question is, there's someone that you've met or been in your life that has set a good example for you in aging, someone that inspires you to age abundantly. And given your first stories, you talked about growing up, I can imagine that they're probably and you've actually named a couple of others, but can you name one?
Well, can I ask a question first?
Yes.
So of your guests, is there a pattern or a higher percentage that say their grandmother?
Yes.
Okay, that's okay. So I'm just going to add to your pattern.
No, from a non-research perspective, I think grandparents, grandmother, and not only the guests here, but it's always interesting, talking to folks who come to work for us at United Church Homes, and how many of them say, "Yeah, I'm here because my grandparents or my grandmother or my grandfather was really important to me as a young child, and that's how I developed this yearning and this desire to be in relationship with." Yeah. So go
Well,
ahead.
my grandma, and obviously as a child, but then as an adult, I was with her all the time. So she was a friend, and at the end of her life, I was a care partner with her. So all these different sort of dynamics with her over time. She walked me down the aisle at my wedding.
Oh,
I knew I could get to her really. Where she lived was like 15 minutes away, but I could get there in 5. Like, those kinds of things. We were so close. But I think the things that she really taught me, and I'm so grateful for this question because it's a realization that I think will change my perspective on everything moving forward. But she lived with curiosity. So pre-Google, my grandma had like the full set of Britannica encyclopedias, and she would visit them often during the day. Like I could tell you where they were in any different place she lived. That curiosity was just so inspiring. She also lived with gratitude. So we know in 2025, gratitude is so important, but my grandma started every day with devotions, notebook after notebook after notebook of what she was grateful for.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to get emotional, but that the last thing was joy. So yes, she was the person that we would laugh until we cried. I smiled with her all the time. But what I realized in thinking about it and really pondering it, those three things she was every day. But she wasn't, she was those three things on hard days too, on good days, on bad days. And so to be able to live your life every day with curiosity, with gratitude, and with joy, no matter what's happening, that's not just aging abundantly, that's living abundantly. And that's what she
Absolutely.
taught me. So thank you for that question, because it's a beautiful way to think about her that way.
Yeah, yeah. Well, living is aging, so
That's right. That's right.
yeah, yeah. Well, thank you so much, Amy. And thank you to our listeners for listening to this episode of The Art of Aging, part of the Abundant Aging podcast series from for the Center for Abundant Aging from United Church Homes. And we want to hear from you. What's changed about you as you've aged that you love? What has surprised you most? And how do you define abundant aging? And who is your abundant aging, what we say, the influencer? That's I think your grandmother was one of your influencers, Amy. You can join us at www.abundantaging.org to share your ideas. And Amy, do you want to let people know how they can get a hold of you?
Yes, again, the OMA website is, my contact information is there, and also at Scripps Gerontology Center, their website, my contact information is available there, and please feel free to reach out.
Great. Thank you for this time, and until next time, thank you for listening.
Thanks.